All right. Thanks for joining us, everybody. I've got Tom Ashley here, joining from CDW Education. Tom, you are a senior national K-12 cybersecurity strategist, which means you're definitely going to be someone I want to talk to and learn from. Before we dive in, could you just tell us a little bit more about yourself? I understood you said you had 20 some odd years experience leading K-12 in a technology context, but there's probably a lot more to the story. You want to tell us about yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Sam. I'll start with this is that yes, I was a K-12 chief technology officer for over 25 years, both in Georgia, the North Georgia mountains, and then most of my career spent in Indiana. But that journey on cybersecurity was definitely a long time coming. And so as a technology leader in K-12, we have a lot of different hats that we wear, and we have to be technical, we have to be, all the politics in the district. But I also gravitated to the cybersecurity side of the house. And so in Indiana, I was very involved with the COSIN chapter. COSIN is a national organization that supports technology leaders, K-12 technology leaders. And so many states, I think it's 30 some, 39 states have a COSIN chapter. But as leading that chapter, we knew that cybersecurity was a really important topic, and one that a lot of technology leaders and school districts in the state weren't really prepared to improve. And so, as a leadership group in the state, we decided we're going to make a cybersecurity task force. And in that task force, the whole purpose of that was to try to sort of provide clear out some of the noise. Cybersecurity is very complicated and complex, and so we wanted to be a part of the solution where we would bring resources together and try to clear some of the noise, offer a path, offer support for school districts, and to try to get them to help improve. And so that continued my journey on being interested in cybersecurity. And then after many years inside of my district as a technology leader, I came to a point where I was going to retire. And going through COVID and recovering from COVID as a district and all of that, I decided to say, hey, maybe there's one more phase of my career. And so I applied and was able to get a job of education strategist with CDW. And the cool thing about the strategist role is that we don't sell anything. CDW is a great company to work for. They sell lots of things to support education in a variety of ways, and always basically. But our roles, there's 5 of us across the country that do this. But our role is basically CDW's investment back into education. We have no
That's
selling
great.
requirements. And so our purpose, and one of the reasons I was really intrigued with this role, and still am today, almost reaching 4 years as of June. But our role is to support school districts and technology leaders and districts to help put their pieces together around a variety of topics. And so I kept on being positioned and leaning towards cybersecurity, and started even working internally to help build more types of services and supports for K-12. One example is CDW offers assessments and testing for governments and the military and enterprise, the IBMs of the world, and these enterprise organizations. But there wasn't really a ton of resources for K-12. K-12 is complex, and K-12 is different than these other organizations. And so kept on leaning towards being involved with cybersecurity and trying to improve it. Then I got connected with the Cybersecurity Coalition for Education, and I can provide a link and all of that. But what their mission
Be great.
was is to continue that process that we had already started earlier in Indiana, is trying to clear the noise for education, K-12 education, to try to provide a starting point and support for districts. And so this coalition, and there's that whole story just of revolving around that, how that connection happened. But that this coalition created a rubric, and so this rubric was based on the NIST standards, but it was written for K-12 and K-12 language, and trying to meet K-12 needs. And if anyone in education ever tried to adopt the NIST standards or CIS controls or any other framework out there, trying to adopt it to education is daunting, and it's a huge challenge. and so I was attracted to that. And so then being involved internally with cybersecurity, being involved with this now K-12 designed rubric, cybersecurity maturity rubric for education, and really starting to see and laser focus on how we can make a difference across the country on helping districts improve their maturity, and led to me spending a lot of time just in my own role as a strategist talking about cybersecurity. But now CDW found that it was important, and this really needs to be more of a national impact. And so, just as of a few months ago, made my role the national cybersecurity strategist. And I still enjoy all of the other things that strategists do and the conversations that we have and supporting technology leaders. But now I get to be more laser focused on trying to help districts mature on their cybersecurity needs. That need is not going away, and so I'm excited about being involved with it. But I know it's a little bit of a longer winded journey, but I'm old and I've had a lot. It's been sort of a long time, and so that's how I got to what I'm focused on right now.
So you were exiting during COVID, is what I heard, right? You were let's say even the full-time education space. That was when you were making that transition.
No,
Is that
it
right?
was afterwards. And so ramping
Right
up to
after. Okay.
COVID, dealing with all of the COVID and what we had to do as a school district to respond to that, and
Yeah.
then recovering from COVID. And then I retired June of 2022. So a little bit after we went
Oh,
through
so
all
you
of
went
that.
way after. Oh, okay.
And so that's how what I
Did
started
you
on my
guys
next journey.
did you guys have to move to did you have to move to a fully remote system, obviously in 2020, then probably 2020, 2021? Where were you at? What area of the country were you at when that happened?
That's a good question. It's one of the things I'm really most proud of, because as a district,
Yeah.
we had a lot of success prior to COVID. We had actually moved to a remote learning capability a year or two prior, and we were
Oh man.
set up and designed and actually were practicing remote learning before COVID hit. And so we would take several days of out of the year that we would say and being intentional, like today is going to be remote learning day. And so the year previous to COVID hitting, we were practicing as a school district on how to do this. And the other thing that was really, a little bit luck, a little bit, because of how device purchases were made and availability. I had moved to a device purchase schedule and a refresh cycle to happen earlier in the year, like happen in February. And so by the time everything was shut down, all of my
Right.
devices were already sitting in my warehouse,
Oh man.
being, processed, ready for deployment later in that spring. And so I know, a huge challenge for K-12 was all of a sudden, okay, what are we going to do now? Let's go order a bunch of devices. And so I had all my devices in place. We had already practiced the remote learning. So there is a lot of things that you had to still do, and you had to scale to a much higher level than what you would need. But overall, as a district, we were probably about as prepared as we could be prepared. And also I'm proud that my superintendent actually won an award based on that preparation of being a superintendent that led the preparation, and when it actually came down to it, we were pretty prepared.
Wow. Talk about timing. I did not have that experience, and I remember I had a pallet of Chromebooks. They literally had Walmart stickers, and then on top of it they had a new price, and the price was like triple. And I was like, what is it? Somebody had bought. I don't know if there was just a warehouse. You can imagine, right? Opportunist. Someone had bought like a warehouse full of these Chromebooks or whatever from Walmart, and then just were scalping everybody for them. So yeah, that was one of the standout things that really disgusted me early 2020 when that happened. So I was in China. Fun fact, it wasn't me. I didn't bring it. I promise.
You're patient
Um,
zero.
but yeah, I mean, I left China. I left China in 2020, early in 2020 U.S. So um, that was an interesting experience. So I was remote working for China, basically working nights, getting them set up for distance, and at the same time, ended up finding work here during the day to do the same thing, preparing districts for the same process. Um, Well, I tell you what interests me is in your kind of your shortened bio, your introduction, you mentioned a couple of things, and I want to come back to the rubric idea. Now, I was at COSIN. The first time I heard of the rubric was Miami COSIN. So I don't know how long it's been around, but that was how many years ago was that? Maybe 2 years,
Yep,
three
a couple
years
years
ago
ago.
in
Yeah,
Miami.
not last year was Seattle. The year before that, I believe. So
Okay,
two and two, three
okay, and
years
it
has
was
been
that.
around.
Oh, and that, so it is relatively
Yeah.
new. Okay, okay. And that's the I forget the name, the
CCRE,
CCRE or something like that.
CCRE, Certified
CCRE.
Cybersecurity
Okay.
Rubric Evaluator.
Okay. 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 Got it. Got it. Got it. Where's the overlap? Have you already kind of made those connections in your mind? Where's the overlap with for example, if somebody's watching this and they say, I want to know more about this rubric, which is K-12 geared, and I am having a really hard time applying, say, you know, obviously 853 controls are just outlandish for K-12, but maybe someone says, yeah, actually I can kind of wing it with the CSF, right? Like the cybersecurity framework. And you know what? I really like my, let's say CIS. I like my CIS. I love my benchmarks. I love the V8 standard. Where do you see the overlap, and where do you see those things coming together in a good way?
Well, the CCRE was written based on NIST, and so it is covers the same. So if you are trying to adopt NIST standards and identify, protect, and govern, and recover and
Mhm.
detect, protect all those standards, those main domains of around the NIST standards is the same. Translates directly into the CCRE, and so
Brilliant.
and so that's the beauty of it too, is there's everything in there aligns to the other frameworks, and so it's not really anything new. It's just, and the way I
Mhm.
the way I describe it is it's a K-12 interpretation of NIST. And so again, it sort of clears out some of those things that K-12 doesn't need to deal with, and just makes a cleaner version. And the rubric is designed again as a maturity assessment, and so the maturity assessment can be used in a variety of ways. It's a resource, and I will provide the website if you wanted to share that at some point. But the beauty of this entire process is that a school district can go to this website, download the rubric, do a self assessment, and get a score. And but it's also built in a couple additional things. Is number one, there's free training involved, where a K-12 technology leader can go get trained and actually
Mm.
get certified as a cybersecurity rubric evaluator, and add a real credibility, because we know, and I know, being in the district, that I want to do anything I can do to help amplify the voice of a technology leader, a K-12 technology leader. And so if they get a certification, that helps. And so this framework was wrapped around it, was with free training that's available, and then the test to get certified does cost $100, but the coalition provides a code really to anyone that is in K-12 can get a code that gives that test for free. And so now we have free training for a self-assessment that any school district can use to self-assess themselves, a certification that's built into it as well to help amplify and add to the credibility of that technology leader, and then build a network and a series of technology leaders that can also work together, because it's built into the process of having a third party facilitate that assessment, because what a third party does is adds credibility and validation to someone just a self assessing themselves. And so you can team up with a colleague, you can team up with someone else in
It's
your
like you and
network,
I.
and you can team up with someone like
So you and
that's
I
in a
here.
role to
Yeah.
do it.
Okay.
And so that's in the next level of it. But then even further, and this is what I worked on internally with CDW, is we created a professional version of this. And so for a very minimal cost, I engaged with one of our cybersecurity professionals that adds a professional level of ability to identify gaps, to also create that prioritize next steps on the assessment. And so districts have options. You can do everything for free based on your limited resources. You can have team up with a colleague or someone like myself, or you can go to that next level. And that's what we're rolling out right now, is being able to offer a professionalized version, but it's scoped for K-12 and priced for K-12. And so that's what I'm most proud of as well, is that internal work to offer this of a resource because it also it helps districts be compliant or eligible for grants or state mandates. I know how in Ohio there's a House Bill 96 that requires the adoption of a cybersecurity framework. And so this is just an example of doing something that is good for yourself, good for your district, but also puts your district in position to be eligible for other things as well.
Where did when you said that, it reminded me of the what's called the NCSR, the National
Yep. So
Cybersecurity.
MSI
Um,
SAC.
yeah, yeah, it reminded me of that. What is there any connection? Do you feel like this could be? I'm not saying competition, but what are your thoughts? How do you feel like those things come together?
No, I think, and again, that was a resource that was valuable. I'm a big fan of the MSI SAC and CIS and those agencies, which have been drastically cut down. And so this is supplemental.
Yes,
It's
unfortunately.
offering options, and I highly recommend. School districts have limited funds, and so if you can find great partners and you can offer lower or reduced cost types of services, use them. And that the resources provided by MSI SAC that is more challenging now because a lot of some of those I don't even think that's available anymore as of like the last year or so. And so when you have access to those things, those vetted free tools, use them. And there's other organizations that do great work. COSIN does great work, and K12 6 does great work, and Doug Levin, excuse me. And so I talk all the time is trying to identify those other resources. And again, I'm not this is not to try to say I'm trying to only say use CDW's professional version of this. That's not. It's just another tool, and the reason it has to be a cost. My time with a school district is free. I don't know if I mentioned that, but my time,
Oh,
anything
wow.
I do with a school district in any capacity is no charge to the school district. And I go referencing
Wow.
investment backed into education, but if I'm engaging with a cybersecurity professional, that's when there is a cost, and again, it's a minimal cost, but it's all depending on trying to meet the needs of a district. Some districts would want that professional perspective, and some districts can't either afford it or don't need it.
That is amazing. I got to tell you, kudos to CDW for that. That's a great, just a great offering back to the community. So appreciate that. Um, I was thinking about our standards conversation. A lot of people will, bristle up a little bit. We talk about standards and they don't like to be that constrained, right? But I wanted to mention another standard and framework and see if if there's a roadmap or maybe what your feelings are on it. How do you feel about the AI risk management framework? How do you feel like, how do you feel like this may adapt, or where do you see things going as it pertains to, say, the safe, ethical, private use of AI, et cetera, in K-12? Because I got to tell you, you've probably got stories, right? But I can tell you so many stories where the the folks that I'm talking to, they are just worried, right? Just so worried that they don't even know the questions to
Hmm.
ask to be sure that their community, that their kiddos, that their data is safe. They're worried about, I mean, they're worried about I've got folks worried about, hey, company XYZ just decided to turn on this feature and now I got to figure it out, right? No, we're not calling out Google or anything, but now I've got Gemini, what do I do? And then I've got folks that are saying, hey, vendor XYZ LMS now has this little coaching tool and there's a little pop up. I can't turn that chatbot off. What do I do? Other folks are saying, hey, third party vendor risk management. What am I supposed to ask? Do I need to ask about how they're using my data to train their models on to provide me services back? But in theory, they're also providing said services to other customers. So I don't know, where's your head at with AI? Where do you see us going in the next, say 2 years with those concepts?
Well, definitely AI is integrated into the cybersecurity conversation, absolutely. And so when I talk about AI integration into this conversation, AI is going to be your biggest threat that you're going to have to deal with. AI is more sophisticated from phishing to, any type of vulnerability. It's that they can find it so much faster now using AI tools. And so it's going to be your biggest vulnerability, your biggest threat, but it also can be your most powerful shield. And so when you are looking at your cybersecurity protections, excuse me, that AI component is really important. How it's integrated, what protections is AI offering, and so around cybersecurity, that has to be viewed like that. With your existing tools that you may have already in place, or when you're looking at your levels of or layers of protection. sort of critiquing, does this tool that I purchased 5, 6, 8 years ago meeting the need that I currently, need to protect myself against these AI threats? And so, doing a really deep internal reflection on your existing tools, but certainly when you are starting to look at what the layers of protection or what I need to do next, making sure that you are vetting for that AI capability as part of the conversation, because AI is going to, if you don't do something about AI, or AI is going to do something to you for sure. But one step back around AI conversations in general, involving cybersecurity, but just for education in general, a lot of school districts, and this has been an issue for almost my entire career, it's the shiny object syndrome. When something new comes up, and AI is no different for many districts. We're trying to change the narrative around this, but for many districts, like, oh no, AI's here, we better start go buy a bunch of AI tools, and so we can say we're doing AI. And it does everyone a disservice to do that. And we've always done it in education. And what we should be doing, and what I talk about every day when we're talking about AI, is that we need to take a step back. Is we can't just keep on following the shiny object. Is that we have to, as district leaders, as the community, say this is what AI is, and then go and identify the goals and what you want AI to be in your district. It can't just be, you can't have a goal of just going out and buying a bunch of tools and hoping great things happen. It can't be like that. No one can afford that, and it's actually doing a disservice to your students and your staff, and you're putting all the risk down, to that level. If you come up with, what you should be doing is you should be coming up with a goal. You should develop your goals and your plans, your expectations, and then setting that standard. And so once you have those in place, then you can laser focus the tools that support those goals. And once you do that, you're much more effective. You're not just throwing random acts of AI out there to the classroom and expecting great things to happen, because AI should impact instruction in a very profound way. You can't just try to do what you've always done and then implement, or then have AI inserted and expecting, better things to happen. My best example of this is the assignment used to be, write a 3,000 word essay on a specific topic. And that was the assignment. And then you graded and grammar and sources, and that's how it's graded. But now that's the first 3 seconds. And so now what do you do after those 3 seconds? That 3,000 word essay was created. That's the conversation that districts, and I'm not an instructional person. I came from the corporate world, a technical space, and was a technology leader for all those years. But I supported education, and I have an education master's, but I never taught in the classroom. But we should be talking about how instruction needs to fundamentally change. And so assume AI is being used, assume that you're not just trying to spend a lot of wasted time detecting if it's been used, assume that it's used. And then how do you demonstrate, have the student demonstrate critical thinking skills and depth of knowledge of what they created, and being able to talk to others about it and interact and have a conversation about it, how it relates to something else in their lives, or in something, apply it, not just, being able to say, this is what something is, but how do you apply it to other parts of your life or another topic? And so that's just a quick example how AI can and should impact instruction moving forward. It can't be just how, doing business like we've always done it. It has to make a profound difference. And the school districts that get that right are going to put their students at a huge advantage as they enter the workforce or college. And the school districts that get that wrong are going to have students that are just using it to cheat or find shortcuts. And I always like to reference is we're going to end up with a society of students that more relate to the movie Idiocracy than how we want to envision on that. We can't allow AI to do all the thinking for us. And so instructionally, especially in K-12, we have to find ways to keep that critical thinking skill process moving. And so I got me on a little bit of a soapbox there, but AI,
Preach it, brother. Preach it.
AI, it can and should impact cybersecurity, but also should impact education and instruction in profound ways.
I'd love to learn. Maybe we can have a follow up, and I'll ask you what your information, your research, your findings, your thoughts were from your master's program. But thinking as you were talking, I was thinking about our process. How do we get educators in the classroom? And so that process is typically we have folks who are interested in education, maybe they go into a career, maybe they're a second career, but most of the time they're coming into the career from the college track, and they go to university, they get the degree, they do the course material, and they get the classroom, and they got everything they need, right? No, no, no. I'm thinking about that, and I'm thinking, how do we change that? And you don't have to respond. I don't know if there is a good answer. How do we change that? How do we get things that educators need to know and understand? Because we're talking about cybersecurity, we're talking about mental health, we're talking about understanding of consequences of this kind of loss of trust, whether it's deep fake or whatever the case may be. All of those things are so concerning to us as a society, and I'm a parent to all of us. And I just feel like we're missing the boat with K-12. And it's not a bad thing to say, teachers, you're not doing your job. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, how do we support them better? Like, how do we get more of these? I'm so thrilled to know that there are people like you who can do that, and that's your remit. So I'm really excited by that. And the second thing that you were talking about that got me a little bit excited, you were talking about, not just the educational part, but also on the technical side and your background there and your experience there. I know that some of these kiddos, from the ones who are doing it wrong, your example, some of those kiddos are going to end up in the cybersecurity field, and that's where I'm at, right? So I'm a chief information security officer today for an organization, and I'm hiring people, right? So who are the people I'm hiring? Am I hiring the kids who know how to develop their own thoughts and use these tools in a way that can enhance their experience and research things and learn things and gather new knowledge and find out about, ask 100 people, what's glasswing? How many out of 100 people know glasswing, you think, Tom? So that's kind of what I'm thinking about, and that's going to impact the cybersecurity world in just a few years as these kids are exiting, right?
Yeah, and there's a lot there too, and a couple things. If I remember, I'm really old, so you said a lot of stuff there, but no, it's not. It's a, what the first thing is how do we make a difference? And we don't necessarily have control of how teachers are prepared. I have thoughts and opinions on how they should be prepared, but if you don't have control of how they're prepared, all you can do is control once they get to a district and that point forward. In K-12, there's been a mindset forever about training the trainer. Like, you think that, you're going to train someone one time and then they're going to go off and do great things. That professional development model is really old, and there's so much research out there that shows, well, I kind of summarize it like this. When you're playing a sport, and when you hear this all the time, well, everything's just moving so fast, and it just seems like everything's confusing. I don't know how to react to it. But once you become experienced, things slow down, and things, like, it seems to slow down. They're not really slowing down. It's that your brain is sped up, and so it just seems slower. So when you have someone that just learned something for the very first time, and they learn it by steps in their brain. And so in their brain, they're talking about going from step 1 to 100, and they have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's why everything this gets complicated. And when you learn something for one time, and then you don't really run into it again, you lose those connections so fast. But when you become an expert at something, and the school district has taken the time to be methodical and repetitive and build upon knowledge, and then also expect it to be used in a short period of time, you build those brain synapses, and you're able to go from 1 to 100 immediately, because your brain knows the path to it. And so I think, and a long story short on that is that teachers are coming in and they're trained on something. If they don't go back and use it immediately, or there's no expectation to use it, there will be a non-user again in a matter of hours or days. And so school districts need to be intentional. They can't boil the ocean with some of these initiatives. They have to sort of spend the right amount of time and use special professional development to make a difference. And so you can actually realize the benefits of some of these technologies by spending the proper amount of time, providing the support. And that's how you can make a difference, by being intentional, not trying to be great at 20 initiatives at one time. And so pick what you want to be great at, focus on being great at that. And maybe there's opportunities to do a couple of things at a time, but not 10. And then also look at the longer term vision of it. The other question you mentioned about, the students and the capabilities and who you should hire as a cybersecurity professional or cybersecurity leader is this is another really loaded question, because I have a son that it was unique, and I maybe not, not completely unique, but he was a kind of a student that could pass any test you put in front of him, and almost ace the one of the standardized tests for graduation without even studying for it, and got a scholarship to a university. But he didn't thrive in traditional college environments, and I still think but these are the kids that can go deeper under some of these topics than other kids that do thrive. And so when I think these are also the kids that are going to end up, if they're not brought to the right side, are the kids that go deeper and can be more focused on doing things that may not be appropriate. And so I think that's one of the biggest challenges we see too. And there's another conversation around esports and finding kids that are involved in esports is, these are the kids that sometimes aren't connected to their schools, but these are the kids that could be a huge value. My son ultimately did not find a job in cybersecurity, even though he had a huge interest, and because he didn't fit the mode of a traditional student, or maybe didn't have a degree. But he's the kid that does math problems on the beach for fun, calculus, and is interested in quantum physics. But these are the kid that wasn't able to find a job in cybersecurity. And so I think the lesson here learned is that there's a lot of kids out there that may not be, your A students, but can demonstrate content and demonstrate the ability to go deeper than most others on the planet. That we got to find these kids to bring in, because these are going to be kids that you fight on the other side, and so that's my story on that. I think there is an opportunity for like cybersecurity academies, just similar to esports academies, finding these kids, getting them engaged, getting them connected, getting them on the right path to leveraging their skills and talents and being recognized for it, and then building pipelines to industry to get them placed into positions that they can make the most impact with.
I love all that. And you reminded me, anybody who's watching, if you've got an esports leader that's really banging it up, give me a shout. I want to have that conversation about how esports and cybersecurity can come together. That's a good one, Tom. What came to mind is I was thinking about the operators in my day job, in my life, where we got security operators. You got lots of different roles. You got GRC folks that do compliance, like we were talking about the rubrics. We got operators that are watching glass all day, every day, and looking for attacks. And you've got folks who are able to communicate a little bit of both, and they can kind of meet in the middle. And what I was gonna focus on as kind of maybe a final thought for us to jam on is, we talked about the teachers, and you said something like do what you're really good at, and that was an organizational thing, not a teacher thing. But for teachers, I think what you would probably say is, well, everybody's going to have a basic understanding, a basic AI literacy, if you want to call it that, to know what to look for and how to identify, M dashes and student text, right? That's ChatGPT, whatever the case may be. I was going to apply that to cybersecurity as a final thought and tell you a little bit from my perspective to see if you have any ideas. I think cybersecurity is changing because what we're seeing is like an increase in the amount of automation and the AI enhancements to the detections. So traditionally, you've got all these different inputs, telemetry would say, all this different information is coming in, and we've got to watch it all day, every day, and we got to make connections. We see a low over here, a medium over here, and a low over here. We'll put them all together, and that's a critical. And that was traditional. And then now the new paradigm, if you want to call it that, is we got AI who can do that better than humans ever could. Mm-hmm. Well, what do the humans do? And that's where I think your son is in my mind. That's where I think your son is, right? Like, we need folks to build those things. Totally. Yeah, 100%. We need the coders, the programmers, everything. But we also need humans to oversee that technology, oversee the AI, because I can tell you so many examples where the AI has put out junk, hallucination, false connections between events, no correlation to actually in reality, or just missed the whole dang boat, right? Just you were looking at this and the risk is over here. This was the risk. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? How do we get back to here? We got to quit talking about AI so doggone much and figure out how do we get back to the brain and say, how do we enhance learning and critical thinking so that kids can enter the workforce and be ready to be hands on keyboard with AI, but do so in a way that actually impacts society for the better and makes us safer.
Yeah, and what you when I was what you said made me think about is agentic AI, and so having AI running in the background and looking for anomalies and looking for patterns and looking for things which is one of part of the protections piece of this.
Mm-hmm.
All of that's really important, but there's also, as you mentioned, those hallucinations and those false positives. And so all AI conversations that I have, it's still, even though the power, and I just talked to a customer just before this meeting, he's doing amazing things with vetting solutions. He created his own basically personal agent, and also his own personal vetting mechanism that he could probably sell as a product. But he's done all this with tools that he's had access to, and so the power is so much important. But it still takes that human in the loop. It really has to be, a human with our uniqueness and our qualities and our flaws to make sure it's looking at the right things. And so that, I think it's always what I talk about. It's also what a lot of research is saying, is that a really important aspect of it. We can't over rely on AI or any technology across the board to do everything for us. And so at some point it makes it, a decision needs to be made, prioritization needs to be, considered. And so, but yeah, you do need a certain background and a skill set to do this. But if you over rely, that's when really some really bad things can happen. If you over rely on an agent, AI agent, to make critical decisions, and then maybe that's where I land on this, is when a critical decision has to be made, then a human should be making that decision. Don't allow an agent to do that for you. It can stop something. So if an agent detects a ransomware anomaly or a file, a certain pattern taking place, stop that process for sure. But then stop it and don't do anything else. Again, it depends. There's a lot of depends in there. But having a human in the loop to make a critical decision, I think, is where I think that we still need to have a role to play.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Well, let's finish it there. I am just, again, I'm so happy, so pleased. If I can get your information, and we'll share out all the links and all the information we talked about today. I'm so happy that folks do have someone to call like yourself. I sure as heck wish I had someone to call like you years ago when I was in that IT role. You've been a great conversationalist here. Thank you for your time. Is there anything you'd like to close with, Tom, before we say goodbye?
No, I mean, the only thing I would want to say is that there's a lot of work to do out there. A lot of school districts and technology leaders need support. Be connected, get networked. There's a lot of great support organizations as well. I mentioned a few of them already, but it's COSIN, it's K-12-6, it's MSI SAC, CIS, CISA, and your local. There's the local state agencies as well that support this topic as well. So, I think an important aspect of being a technology leader in K-12 is you're not alone. Network with your peers, get involved with support organizations, and go on that journey together instead of thinking that you have to do it by yourself.
Well said. Well said. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Thanks.
Take care. Hey, thanks for watching. As you know, our mission at Make It Secure is to empower confident, secure, and ethical use of technology. If you want to see more secure conversations like the one you just watched, be sure to hit the like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to see the next conversation.